That's awesome. So what brought you to Brown?
Well, growing up in Greece, I did go to an American school for a really long time. And then my parents, although they're both Greek, they both went to study in the US at their time. So it kind of felt natural for me to also end up here. But Brown really drew me in because I felt like it was a space where I could really explore kind of many different interests that I had through the open curriculum and um, really have the ability to explore both my interests in economics and international affairs, but also kind of get to meet great people and have a good balance between like the social life and the educational aspect.
That's so awesome. That's great to hear. So moving along to sports art, can you walk us through the journey that led to the idea and eventual implementation of sports art eco power equipment at Brown's Nelson Fitness Center and what inspired you to initiate this project?
Yeah, in my sophomore year fall, so about a year and a couple of months ago, I was enrolled in a course called Climate Solutions taught by the provost for sustainability at Brown, Stephen Porter. And our final project for the course was to write a pitch or a paper about a climate solution, and it had to be geared towards like a certain entity. A lot of students wrote about certain initiatives that they could implement in their cities or states. It didn't feel very natural for me to choose a state or a certain city, not being from the US, but I also didn't want to do something about Greece because I felt like I was too far away from that. So I wanted to write something about Brown. And so I was thinking about what are different sort of initiatives that we could implement in terms of kind of from the environmental perspective that is really student oriented, but not only promotes sustainability, it also promotes kind of health and wellness, which I'm also very interested in. And so I kind of came up with the idea of like, are there any machines out there that can produce electricity? And it felt like at the time when I was looking at the different options. For me, in order to make the proposal as realistic as possible, SportsArt was the company that I found that had the most developed product for what I was looking for, which was a cardio machine that produces electricity through kinetic energy. And so I used sports art as the kind of basis example and business case to kind of make the business case for the Nelson Fitness Center leadership. First of all, theoretically, like in my paper, because I didn't know that this was actually going to be implemented at the time, and kind of used um, these sports art machines as my basis. I talked with Justin Tillinghast to get quote informations and also to get more information about how the machines work. And I also talked with various um, people in other universities that have implemented sports art in their facilities, like in the University of Michigan. And so with that, like I created my proposal. Stephen Porter was super supportive into actually making it happen into reality because he liked the initiative as well and kind of went into a discussion process with the Nelson Fitness Center leadership to like sell them the business case basically or like pitch it. And then the final decision, honestly, wasn't something that was up to me. It was a process that the staff undertook, and they kind of did their own due diligence on sports art, and that ended up following through with using sports art as the um, source of the machines. But I think my inspiration, like overall for the initiative, sorry if I'm getting a bit too technical with like the
No, no,
process,
no.
but
Keep it going.
um, my inspiration for the initiative, just to sum it up, was to combine my two passions of sustainability, but also health and wellness, because it's not just about physical health, but it's also about mental health that, you get a lot of these benefits from exercise. And, in our time and age when there's also something called climate anxiety and, people also worry about like the future of the world in terms of climate change, and they feel like maybe there's not that many things that they can do on a personal level to contribute. I think implementing ways that we can contribute against mitigating carbon emissions on through something that we use every day, which is cardio equipment, I think is a great reminder to people that there are so many different ways that people can contribute to fighting against climate change, as small as it could be as, going on a treadmill for half an hour, or as large as like advocating for climate change policy and like being a reminder that the little things matter as well, and that there's always something that people can do to help um, climate change. Yeah.
I think that's awesome. I love how interested you are in the topic, and a lot of people who are that interested just kind of sit back and let other people do the work. So I think it's really awesome that you really did take initiative and um, got something implemented that's amazing in your own campus. So that's really great. My next question is, when conducting interviews with students on campus, you found that 100% of the respondents were either positive or indifferent to the concept of sustainable fitness equipment being incorporated in the fitness center. What were some of the other key findings or conversations surrounding the topic of putting a greater emphasis on making the campus more environmentally friendly?
Firstly, I want to clarify for this question. I did not conduct interviews. I conducted a survey in order
Okay.
to get like a larger sample size um, for like more of like the technical aspect of it. But I can also I had sent my report that has the findings in them in the appendix to Ruben like a couple of months ago when he asked for it. I can also send it to you if you want like the exact like percentages and responses. If you'd like want to pull those statistics like right out of it.
Okay.
I could definitely send that over, but I surveyed a sample size of 73 students when I was writing up my report in order to basically do a quantitative analysis and like the impacts of the initiative in terms of carbon emissions and cost for the Nelson Center. So that was one side. And then the student aspect was the qualitative aspect and kind of using that sort of data to justify of like why students would want to see this on campus and that this would be a successful initiative in terms of the educational and social benefits, like pulling aside from the cost and environmental benefits. And so, to your point about students being indifferent or preferring the equipment, that was definitely something that really made me happy to see that people would either prefer it or be indifferent because it means that it wouldn't impact their experience in their kind of exercise routines at the Nelson, which is super important because I feel like with a lot of climate change alternatives that people advocate for, it's really important to keep in mind that people will only change their habits and prefer the more climate change friendly option if it's better or equally as good as the non environmentally friendly option. And so I think this was a really key finding because it would only be successful if it was just as good or better. So I think, as you very well pointed out, that was a key finding. And then I also got an 100% response rate for if the students would support implementing those machines at the Nelson. And so that was great to hear. There was no one that was like vocally against it. And then the rest of the survey was more so focused on their exercise habits to kind of gauge how much they would be used, like as cardio equipment.
Awesome. That sounds great. Thank you. My next question is, you had mentioned that the eco power equipment could offset about 2% of emissions from the entire building. How does this compare to other sustainability initiatives at Brown University, like the solar panels placed on the roof of the Nelson Fitness Center?
So in my initial research where I did, as I mentioned, like the quantitative aspect, in order to kind of get that 2% number, I went through electricity data of the Nelson to see how much electricity they use per year. And this is not the data I used was not just on the fitness floor, which is where the equipment is, but the entire building, which also includes the pool facilities, which uses a lot of electricity for heating and cooling. So it's very important to keep in mind that that 2% is for this entire like building that's a complex that uses a lot of electricity. So if I had even the data for the fitness floor, the emissions impact would be even greater. But 2% is still super important. I kind of, in order to get that number, I assumed that the fitness center would have around half of their card equipment being EcoPower equipment. Currently, it's less than half, but kind of like my business case was assuming that at some point it's going to be half. And so if it would be half of the equipment, then it would offset about 2% of the emissions. And compared to the other sustainability kind of initiatives, I know that the solar panels on the Nelson's roof, as you pointed out, offset about 2% of emissions per annum. So, having that equalized if the half of the fleet was EcoPower is super cool and really important because it shows the actual quantitative impact of the um, equipment initiative. In terms of other sustainability initiatives, I'm not sure because they're also new, but I know that Brown is also shifting to testing like geothermal energy sources instead of using natural gas and initiatives like that, which I'm sure will reduce emissions by a lot. But in terms of the solar panels, I think that's like the crux of the finding.
Awesome. Thank you so much for answering that. My next question is, um, have you ever conducted any qualitative research around the student body following the official installation and trial of the equipment, giving them a chance to use the machines? And if so, what have those responses looked like?
Yeah, so last semester when we got the delivery of 8 pieces of equipment, which included rowers, climbers, and treadmills, I created a survey again, so in that sort of qualitative research method, in order to gauge how students interacted with the machines, whether they liked them, how often they did, because the end of the trial period last semester was till the end of December. And so we had to gauge how students felt to see if we would get more of the equipment, switch out some of them. And so the response was very positive. For the most part, I got 66 responses and and sorry. And so the change with the semester is that we replaced the rowers with 2 ellipticals and 2 stationary bikes. And those are to the addition of 2 treadmills and 2 steppers that we have currently. And so out of those 66 responses, um, you know, around half of the sample would rate the experience of using the new equipment as 5 out of 5, on a scale from 1 to 5. Around 30, I'll say 70% of them would rate the performance of the new equipment compared to the previous equipment as 4 or 5. So like on the higher end of the spectrum relative to the other one. And then we also received detailed feedback on the functionality of the equipment. And there was a variety of responses, which is what made us kind of switch out some of them. But overall, it was very positive. Um, and that's great to see and great to hear. Um, and another key finding I'd say in that sense was that 80% would prefer the new equipment over the other in the future because of the ability to produce electricity through their workout, which was great to hear because it's really important to know that people are preferring to also use the equipment because of the reason that they can produce electricity through their workout. Um, and then around 90% said that they believe that the energy producing equipment can help raise awareness around energy use and mitigating electricity related carbon emissions around campus. And 85% said that they would use the equipment like beyond the trial period. So overall, really positive responses. And that's the reason why we're keeping the equipment and potentially, I don't know that that's not my decision, but expanding it in the future.
That's great. I think it's so important that you're getting all of this firsthand feedback from students who actually do use the equipment. I think that's super important. So good for you for creating and conducting all of those surveys. That's awesome.
Thank you.
My next question is, looking ahead, what are your hopes for the future of sustainability within the realm of athletes and fitness?
Yeah, in the respective kind of my take on the combination of sustainability and fitness, I'd really want to see the expansion of the equipment, like not just as being offered more at the Nelson Center, but expanding to other fitness spaces on campus. It would be great to see that equipment maybe in the varsity athletes gym, um, and also potentially have collaborations with the community around Brown within Providence and Rhode Island in general to um, promote the importance of sustainability with health and wellness in mind, and maybe include the community within this initiative. And then beyond that, and maybe in ways that I haven't thought about how sustainability and wellness kind of combine with each other, I'd love to see more students and other students think about the ways that it could be combined and maybe take away from my initiative and kind of using this equipment that kind of what I mentioned earlier, that they can implement sustainability and wellness within every single part of their lives, either on a daily basis or in very different scenarios, and just kind of serve as an inspiration for students to think of other initiatives that could be implemented in daily life that can make incremental but really important changes that can contribute to fighting against climate change on a systemic level and on a personal level as well.
That's great. Yeah, I think getting the product out there and being sustainable on a larger scale than just one fitness center at Brown is definitely the ultimate goal. And I think that's awesome that you're striving for that.
Mhm.
So my last question is, we are currently running a sweepstakes called the Sports Art on Campus Challenge. College students have the chance to win sustainable fitness equipment prize packages for their rec center, creating an overall reduction in the property's carbon footprint. Do you feel it is important for students to accept the challenge and take it upon themselves to find ways to be more environmentally conscious?
Yeah, as I touched upon, I think it's great that more college campuses and students on college campuses are um, being kind of um, pushed to think about this issue and are motivated to kind of bring that sort of initiative on their campuses as well, because um, I think, again, once students realize that they can implement sustainability on every single part of their lives, and be environmentally conscious without even trying, because they're just doing what you did before, but using a substitute that is just as good, if not better, then that can push for a lot more people being supportive of sustainability initiatives and wanting to implement more and more, especially when they see that it's very easy to implement and practical to implement, and we don't need to change so many things in our lives to be able to fight against climate change. And so this sort of initiative is great to see, and hopefully can not only inspire the installation of this equipment and this sort of initiative on campuses, but kind of move beyond that and serve as an inspiration for other initiatives as well.